The Standing Committee on Finance. Our orders of the day pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, March the 14th, 2012. Our study of Bill C-377, an act to amend the Income Tax Act requirements for labor organizations. I call the meeting back to order. I want to thank our guests for joining us here this afternoon. We have, first of all, we have the Building and Construction Trades Department, AFL-CIO. If I could ask our witnesses to do an opening statement, maximum 5 minutes. There's a lot of questions from members on this issue, so we'll start with right away with Mr. Blakey, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm one of the 500,000 men and women who make their living in one of Canada's biggest and most important industries, the building and construction trades. Shortly put, we build the nation. We've had a number of fairly important, I think, shared concerns with the current government of Canada, dealing with energy, pipelines, nuclear, natural resource extraction, and looking after Canadian veterans. We've been a pretty reliable partner on that, and with industry and with government. We would like to build a stronger Canada. What we said we were going to do on that subject with you, we have done, through regulatory reform, through the pipeline debates, through Bill C-45. We think that the current private members' bill will make a lot of our members question why we would bother to try and work with the Government of Canada. I'm here to ask you not to make a mistake. We're about putting people to work. What's at stake here is the use of the taxation power of the Government of Canada to punish a perceived enemy that a number of people think has never supported us since Confederation. Let me put the argument on a higher plane. If the dues paid by a union member are monies deducted from income prior to tax being paid, then union dues are taxpayer funded. This premise is wrong in both law and in logic. The union member gets the tax break, not the union. But let me indulge this for a moment without conceding the point. If the public policy principle is if the taxpayer funds it, then the taxpayer gets to know. Look at your own return when you file it. Line 212 of the income tax return provides for annual union, professional, or like dues. They may be deducted in order to calculate net income. This should mean that doctors, lawyers, veterinarians, engineers, human resource professionals, and a host more, those sorts of organizations are funded by tax dollars. If they are funded by tax dollars, why would they not be required to disclose if this is solid public policy? There are thousands of employer organizations in this country. There are thousands of other not-for-profit, industry-based advocacy organizations that are funded by dues that are deducted from pre-tax income of corporate Canada. This must, of course, mean that they are funded by tax dollars. If it is sound public policy to require unions to disclose, why would they not be required to disclose? The mother of all tax breaks is the 75% of the first $350 we get from our political donations. And that is actually a tax credit for tax paid. The mandate of political parties is to nominate candidates, to set out platforms, to elect leaders, one of whom will eventually become the Prime Minister of the country, and to affect the country. If political parties are funded by tax dollars, are they required to disclose? The answer is yes. It is a simple financial statement. There is no breakdown. It is all aggregated data. There is nothing that will tell you what someone has done. Business gets to deduct from income things like the Skybox at the Air Canada Centre, the business lunch, less personal consumption. Isn't that funded by tax dollars? And shouldn't that be accountable? Are we in a position where mom and pop investor should be making a public disclosure and what the restaurant down the street pays its waitress? I'm a lawyer. I'm a member of a professional association. I can't practice law unless I'm in and paying. I have no choice. As a steam fitter, I'm also a steam fitter. I can be a union steam fitter or a non-union steam fitter. There are no non-union steam fitters. Business organizations, advocacy groups, the merit contractors, Labor Watch, and the other interrelated group of people who are in favor of this are asking you to have us do something they're not prepared to do themselves. Who's asking for this? There are no union members chafing in chains saying, give us the disclosure the union won't give us. The only people asking for this are the merit contractors and Labor Watch, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, a group of interrelated, non-union supportive employers.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Blakely, I would say the same. I don't know whether or not you've indicated that you don't support the bill in its current form. Mr. Hebert's indicated that he is open to and understands that from a privacy perspective, specifically for significant amendments are going to have to happen. So I'd like to think that you'd like to make your recommendations in terms of those amendments and not just simply withdraw from the discussion.
I certainly am open to discussing this. There are a number of things that, even if you look at the parallel legislation in the United States, for example, pension, health and welfare funds, training funds are exempt from the bill in the United States. It's only the union that has to file. My submission and the written submission we've put in suggests that if in fact there is a requirement that everyone who's under line 212 in the Income Tax Act has to make disclosure, well, make professional associations do it, we'll do it. Make employer associations do it, and we'll do it. It just seems to be fair to say that everyone who's in the employment milieu somewhere should report. In the United States, the Act is the Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act, not the Union.
Mr. Blakely, you also, in terms of how this applies to people, on parle de défense des droits des travailleurs.
You're talking about defending the rights of workers. How can revealing their salaries, for example, a secretary, what she earns, what impact could that have?
To making things better for a trade union, to have my secretary's salary on the public web for the world to see, I can see no public purpose whatsoever that's served by that.
Et vous avez mentionné, lorsque vous avez répondu à M. Dijkstra,
And when you answered Mr. Dijkstra, you said that there was a problem regarding fairness.
applies to unions, but it was not balanced. Can you maybe expand more on?
Well, the deduction for union dues is in the same section of the Income Tax Act as professional fees. I'm a lawyer. I have to pay my bar fees or I can't work. I'm also a steam fitter. I can be a union steam fitter or a non-union steam fitter. It's my choice. If the union has to disclose it, why wouldn't the professional associations who must get exactly the same tax-funded status as a union have to disclose? And why would not an employers association who gets exactly the same funding structure and the same tax break not have to disclose?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Marston, please, if you're around.
Mr. Chair, and it's worth noting that those cases were resolved by the courts. They didn't need this bill to do it. I signed my first union card in 1961, and I spent 22 years as a rank-and-file member of my union, first with the railway and then with the communication workers of Bell Canada. I attended every union meeting. Every month I saw and voted on the financial statements of 2 separate unions. As a delegate later on, I was a delegate to our national convention where I got to see and vote on every financial statement, which was audited. Then in about 82, I was elected as an officer in my local, and I attended the Canadian Labour Congress as a delegate every single convention until being elected here. Saw and voted on them. And I will point out something. Neither my employer nor the government had a vote on those because it was the information of the membership, not of the union, but the membership, because that's who the union is. Sorry, Mr. Blakey, testimony today has highlighted a fact that your competitors are the ones that want this bill because it'll give them an advantage over you. Would you like to explain that a little bit further? One point might be relative to the hiring hall. I mean, there is the separation between the two types of unions.
We're a hiring hall union. Hiring hall unions allow us to dispatch people to go to work to employers. If you get on the hiring list, you need to be a member of the union. Our members are volunteers. Our pension plans, our training funds, we do about have about $600 million invested in training across the country, and we spend about $300 million a year training people. The bill will require us to disclose that information, and it will give our competitors, the merit shop, access to that information. They will know how much money we have, what we spend it on, what we do. It will give them access, an intelligence bonanza, bar none, to be able to compete with us. We run the hiring hall, we run the pension plan, we run the training with the assistance of our employer partners. Our employer partners bid against the merit shop. Why should they have to disclose what is essentially their trade and business confidentiality to their competitors? No other business has to do that.
Well, this bill clearly sideswipes employers as well as unions.
My question is for Mr. Blakely. Mr. Blakely, you represent members who work hard, who represent the middle class, plumbers, electricians, who pay union dues. And now their organizations are going to have an administrative burden that's going to be very costly, whereas those people need services from their own union organizations. What impact will that have on your members, those you represent, a bill like this?
If you look at our organization, we're an international union. We do not report in the United States, as was suggested earlier. In Canada, we are not required to report under the American legislation, but we do get information from our American colleagues. They tell us that, and we've confirmed this with the professionals that do our accounting, actuarial, benefit consulting, that sort of thing. This bill is going to add 20% to the cost of the administration of the union. It is going to require the pension fund, a $1 billion pension fund, to file a report the size of a large city's phone book. It is going to take money away from our ability to service people. It is going to take money away from our ability to provide pensions. It is going to take money away from our ability to look after the kids' teeth. So we're opposed to this sort of reporting. We are not opposed to transparency, and we are completely transparent to our members. We do not think we need to be transparent to the merit shop.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Blakely. Je pense que c'était assez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blakely. I think that was quite transparent.